Batman, and guess what? I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Hey guys, I'm Scott Wessel. Thank you for joining me for my very first movie review here on YouTube. For my very first movie review, I figured it was time to review something very special to me. But it's an older movie that you've probably seen, and that movie is 2008's The Dark Knight. Now, there are a couple reasons why I chose to review The Dark Knight. Reason number one is very clear if you are looking at your screen right now, and that reason is I love Batman. Batman is my favorite superhero. He is such an amazing comic book hero. He was created by Bob Kane, and he has just impacted my notions of storytelling, the way that I view comic books as a whole. I'm a big comic book nerd, and Batman's the best. So I decided let's start with Batman because Batman is someone that I love. And why not start with something I love? The second reason that I have is because hopefully the very first movie that I will review for you that is being released in wide release in theaters will be Christopher Nolan's Tenet, which comes out on July 17th in the United States. We're still waiting to find out what will happen here in Canada, but I'm hopeful. So we'll see what happens there, but I'm really looking forward to reviewing that one for you. And I figured, let's just do another Christopher Nolan movie. And Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy is just a great time for me as a Batman fan, unless we're talking about Dark Knight Rises, or just as a moviegoer, because Christopher Nolan makes great stuff. And so I'll just say right off the bat, this movie is excellent. It's just a great time. It is probably the best movie of the trilogy if we're looking at it from a cinematography or how movies are made stance. I personally think that Batman Begins is better, but only because I'm a big Batman nerd, and as a Batman movie, that one is just, it gives me more of the bat, and that's what I want. The Dark Knight tells the story of Batman, along with his counterparts, Police Commissioner Jim Gordon and District Attorney Harvey Dent, as they seek to save their city, Gotham City, from a new and unprecedented threat. Now, this threat remains largely a mystery to them, but that threat is the Joker. And that is where we begin this movie. Now, Christopher Nolan both directed and co-wrote this movie. He was also a producer on it. And you can really see that he had his hand in everything that was going on. The plot of the movie is really, really cool. There's a lot of really cool things that he does in it. However, there's also a lot of exposition. There are plot threads that are all over the place, not poorly placed, they're just always present. You are always walking into another piece of dialogue that pushes you forward in the story. Now, for a 2.5 hour long movie, that means that there are sections that didn't seem as necessary to me as others. All of them, in the grand scheme of things, made a great movie. But if I were to look back on this movie, I would see a couple distinct things that were important, and I would sort of ignore some of the other things. This movie dealt with multiple different themes, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to talk about one of them. And that one theme is, I believe, the most important theme in this movie, and it is the fall of the hero. This movie centers on three characters who at the beginning of the film we see as good men. We have Batman or Bruce Wayne, we have Commissioner Gordon, and we have Harvey Dent. Now, of course, Harvey Dent at the beginning of the movie is the pinnacle of good. He is Gotham's White Knight. He is the one who is doing the most good within the city. But by the end of the film, what we see is that Harvey Dent is now the bad guy. He has succumbed to the corruption of the Joker and of the world and of bad circumstances, and he has become what he sought at one point to fight. Which is why early on in the movie we hear the line, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Now, that line is just so important for what this movie does. It shows so much about human frailty. We see people at their absolute best lowered to their absolute worst, and that is probably the biggest and most important theme in this movie. Now, I said I wouldn't, but I have to at least talk about some of the other themes just a little bit, because I will feel like I have not told you all that I discovered if I don't. So one of the other themes that we see is that Gotham City is actually a character in this movie. And Christopher Nolan does a lot of really great things using the camera to show us this. And I'll talk about the camera work just a little bit later on. But for now, I want to say that the way that every shot has either a large crowd or a full-on shot of Gotham City in it really points you to this idea that the people, the mob mentality of Gotham City, that character has its own fears, own insecurities, and it has its own goals. And this is something that he explores later on in the movie, and I just thought that was really interesting. The other one that we see is the mystery of the Joker. Now, the Joker is always a mysterious character, and he always has been. The comic books paint him as a character we know nothing about. There's really no origin story for him, except for really one that matters, that being the Killing Joke. And it's just, he's a character that no one knows. He's an enigma. He's not supposed to be understood entirely, but you're supposed to be able to understand him because you understand Batman, and him and Batman are pretty much alike. They're pretty much the same thing with just different goals and maybe different upbringings, but they're pretty much the same. And that's what's most scary. And so we see that in this movie as well, except that they really play up the mystery of the Joker. He tells you stories of how he got these scars or how he ended up where he was, but we don't know whether those are real or if they're false, and we're never going to know, and that is in itself the beauty of this movie. Now, the other theme that I did notice that I have to mention just because I thought it was a little bit tacked on, kind of like this part of the review is, the segment in the movie where Batman has created a room which uses all the cell phones in the city to sonar the whole city so we can triangulate Joker's position. Lucius Fox, played by Morgan Freeman, gets very upset about this, and it's a very quick, very brief, nobody should have this much power moment. And I just thought that scene was helpful for the plot. It helped us get from point A to point B, and it is an important thing to look at. I just didn't think it was the thrust of the movie. And so that's the themes that we saw, and now I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the acting. The cast of this film is excellent. From Heath Ledger as the Joker to Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent, there is a wide variety of actors all putting in their best effort into this film. Of course, you may be aware that Heath Ledger won a posthumous Oscar for his performance in this film, and it is rightfully deserved. He did such an excellent job showing us the mind of madness, and that is all due to his commitment to the role. Gary Oldman was a fantastic Commissioner Gordon, and he will always be the best Commissioner Gordon in my mind. However, Christian Bale is, I would say, the one character or one choice for casting that I've always questioned as a Batman fan. I don't believe that he is the best Batman, though I do believe he does an excellent job playing Bruce Wayne, and I think that speaks to what Chris Nolan is trying to do within his films. He is not trying to give you a Batman movie. He is giving you a movie about the human characters, and Batman is simply an additional piece onto that. But that being said, it's still very well done, and every part of it is believable, and he gives a great performance. But he's not my favorite Batman, that's for sure. Michael Caine as Alfred is by far the best Alfred we will ever have. He is just such a fantastic, well-rounded actor who brings a gravitas, but also some levity to everything that he does. And I can't wait to see what he is doing when he is cast in Tenet, Christopher Nolan's next movie, because that's right, Michael Caine is in everything that Christopher Nolan directs. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Now, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the lighting. The lighting in this film is very interesting. It is something that I never noticed until this viewing, and now that I've noticed it, I probably won't ever not see it. The way that it is lit is just so interesting and well put together. The lighting speaks specifically to some of the themes that I didn't mention in my themes section. Specifically, the way that Christopher Nolan uses harsh white light in almost everything. Even in the middle of the night, inside a building, it is bright as day. And so this movie that is called The Dark Knight is also probably closer to the middle of the day night. It's very bright. There's a lot of bright things going on. But what it does is it makes the darkness so much more vivid. And not only does it make the actual darkness more vivid, but it makes the dark actions and deeds of its characters even more interesting, because the darkness within humanity is not confined to the nighttime. It happens during the day. It happens with bright lights on for everyone to see. And that lighting is just so extremely well done. Another thing that I noticed was the usage of reflective surfaces for lighting. It seems like the majority of the outdoor shots, of course there's a lot of windows, it would make sense, are littered in reflective surfaces bouncing light off onto the camera. That makes sense because you're outside and there's lots of windows. But then when you step inside, there's still windows everywhere. There's so much glass being used and the light reflects in so many interesting ways. And I thought it was just very well done. And I was blown away by the amount of light that was reflecting off things to give us those really neat shots. And now what I want to do is I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the camera work. This movie uses a lot of really neat camera shots and angles to provide us with a world that feels larger than life and lived in. Now, the biggest and most prominent shot that is being used constantly throughout this movie is the aerial view. There must be a team of helicopter pilots who spent the whole time filming this movie just flying around over top of this city, getting shots of the road and the buildings, and it was like you get this wide shot and then it just zooms in ever slowly to the focal point of the shot. And at first I thought, oh, this is just an establishing shot that he's using to show us the world. But it just kept happening and happening and happening. And I'm not entirely sure why he did it, but it works. And I like it a lot. The other shot that he uses quite often is, again, not sure what it's called, but I'm calling it the circle shot. We see a lot of shots where he starts on one side of a character and he moves around them. And this gives you the sense that you're experiencing them from everyone's point of view, everyone around them. And so what we see at times is we see characters like Batman, Commissioner Gordon, and Harvey Dent meeting together surrounded by a camera. So you see all angles of their conversation. But then you, at the end of the movie, see that very same shot once you've seen Harvey Dent progress into madness and become Two-Face. And shots like that were really, really interesting that I really appreciated. Also, every time the Joker talked, circle shot. And anytime he told us a story about his scars or how he got this way, it was just circle shot. And again, that consistency was something I noticed and I appreciated. The other shot that I noticed that really only happened once, but when I saw it, it just blew me away, was at the end of the movie when Joker has been captured by Batman. Joker is about to fall to his death and Batman shoots his grapple gun down and pulls him up a building to save his life so that the police can capture him. When he does so, he is caught by the pant leg and dragged upward. So he's upside down. And at first the camera focuses on him upside down, but then it flips it. It goes 180. And now what we see Joker upright and Batman upright having a conversation about who they are and how they are not that different. Joker claiming that Batman is the same as Joker, and Batman saying, no, I am not you. But yet they have flipped Joker on his head so as to show that similarity and that connection between the two. And his coat is still hanging, and it is an excellent shot, and I loved it. I thought it was just so intriguing, and the physics are a little bit off, but it's a little unsettling, but just a great shot. And I thought that was a really well chosen piece of camera work. Now, I want to close out this review by sharing a few of my thoughts just in general, because I've said a lot here. And in fact, there's a lot more that I wanted to say, but I had to shave it down because of time, because otherwise it's just a madman rambling for an hour and a half, which would be very easy for me to do with this kind of thing. So I'm cutting myself short, and I just want to say I really enjoyed this movie. This movie is a lot of fun to watch. It does have a few moments in it where I believe that they could have trimmed sections, but then you wouldn't have the same plot that you have. So there are all those pieces are integral to the plot, but to the viewer, the viewing experience, I would have said we maybe don't need them. I thought that the plot was very complicated, but that's Christopher Nolan for you. If you're watching a Christopher Nolan film without a complicated plot, are you really watching a Christopher Nolan film, right? And that's just what it's going to be. I would have changed that, but on the whole, I thought this movie was just really well done, and I experienced a lot more cool things watching this movie this time than I have any other time. So I want to thank you for joining me for this very first movie review, and I'm really looking forward to doing more of these. My next movie I'll be reviewing is a classic movie, a movie that I have not yet seen, surprisingly, but is one that has changed how cinema was produced, was made, and was seen by the world. And that movie is 1942's Casablanca. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that as much as I am. And I'll talk to you guys real soon. Bye.